Hi everybody, welcome to Paul Programs, your spot for learning more about game design and game mechanics. Today, we're going to talk about building up that digital collection of whatever you want really. Pokemon, trophies, achievements, just Grimoire cards, whatever you want, because collections is what we're talking about. Okay, if you're interested in learning more about game design and game mechanics, or you have a specific mechanic you want to see talked about, let me know in the comments section below. Don't forget that if you want to see more videos like this, like, subscribe, hit the bell so you know when those videos drop, and let's begin. What are collections and why do they matter in your games? Well, basically, collections are a grouping of things, and it varies from game to game, but in some cases, they're rewards you earn from completing stages or completing certain tasks or missions, or they can even be part of your actual gameplay. And a good example of thinking about that is something like Pokemon, where the catchphrase used to be gotta catch 'em all. It's literally about creating a collection of Pokemon, getting all the different ones that are out there with different breeds, different stats, so you can raise them for competing, but it's about increasing your collection. And that's just one of the ways that collections become like a core mechanic of your game. But there's also like using them as unlockables, something to entice your players to keep doing more. And while it's never really gonna be, except for Pokemon, the core mechanic of your game, collections are a great way to improve like player engagement, get players interested in doing more and exploring more of your world. Put things that they may want somewhere that they may never usually go in the game, and show them things that they may not expect. But when it comes to collections, they can be great as both your central element or a supplement that makes the players want to just do more, see more of your game. But with that said, let's actually take a look at some games that make great use of collections. A game that everyone knows is big around collecting and makes it a central theme of its gameplay is Pokemon. And Pokemon has basically gamers and players going around different regions capturing Pokemon to complete a Pokedex. And there's a lot of different unique collecting elements that are part of the Pokemon's design. One is the basic idea of trying to catch all these different Pokemon and complete the different tasks to get the different forms or catch Pokemon that aren't usually very common. But another unique part is the other element of trying to complete your Pokedex to get all the uniqueness of all the different Pokemon that are available. And a great way to take a look at that is if we go in the Pokedex and open it up, you can see that you can have a number for the amount of Pokemon you've caught, the amount you've seen, and then for the different areas for Sword and Shield, because the DLC added 2 other areas. But if we go in deeper, you can see there's unique Pokemon, but some Pokemon actually also have unique forms. And these unique forms give variation. And gamers may want to catch all the different versions. On top of that, Pokemon also has a mechanic called Shiny. And Shiny is a rare color variation on these Pokemon. And they're more unique, harder to catch. And you have a lot of gamers out there who run streams and other channels just to catch and get every single Pokemon in these unique color schemes. So Pokemon really takes the collecting element of the game and puts it center, more so in the older games than the newer games. But the reasoning for that is because as the games have come out, they've added more and more Pokemon to the point where almost at 1,000 of them. To show how serious the Pokemon Company actually is about collecting Pokemon, they also released a secondary application which lets gamers and players store all the Pokemon they've caught in different games in one place. This allows them to have their collection in one central location. And you're able to go in, go each of the different game files that you have on your Switch system, and then transfer Pokemon from those into your main storage here on home. Also, they provide you different challenges that you can take on for catching specific Pokemon in specific games a certain way. You can also see each of the different Pokemon by the different regions they're from. But with this, Pokemon definitely takes the idea of collecting and makes it central to how it handles the design around a lot of its games. Now let's take a look at how collections can be used as an addition to a game. Something more that isn't really the core feature, but adds something that keeps players going or gives them challenges to kind of take on to unlock different things. And a good example of that is the collections inside of Destiny. Destiny is a loot shooter basically, and players are always trying to collect new gear and stuff. And the game actually rewards you by letting you know what you have, what you've earned, what you've gained. But on top of that, if we go back and look in triumphs, we also have the ability to unlock what's known as triumphs, and they're kind of like challenges, another type of collection basically. And when users take on these challenges, they unlock more about the story for the game. They learn more about the different things that are going on. And as you can see, I'm just unlocking stuff without even realizing it. But in Destiny, the collections are more to add on and supplement the main gameplay. At the end of the day, it's still a shooter, and there's things to take part in and weapons to collect, but something like the Triumphs is a type of collection that basically lets the player take on a challenge that they weren't told to unlock things that they may not expected or something that interests them more, like story elements. Unlocking more of the Grimoire and seeing more of the story and game by completing these challenges and things like that. So you can go into the lore and you can learn more about what's going on, who's done what characters are important. With this shows a great way of just incorporating collections as a sub-element to your game. Right. Now that we've seen some games that make use of collections, how they can be implemented and basically improve player engagement or give players something that entices them to learn more about your game worlds, let's actually take a look at how we can actually design our own collection as part of our own game. Now let's actually go into the design phase where we talk about design ideas, and in this case we're going to center it around collections. And with that, let's design a mechanic that's part of a game, say like a magic casting or fantasy game, where the player goes around gathering spell books, but each of these books is missing a number of pages. And one of the main mechanics is that idea that the player goes around trying to complete and collect all the pages to these different spell books. And these pages can be hidden within the world, and the player can go around to different areas looking around for it. Some of them may be in more obscure areas, and we can make it so this spellbook isn't the central mechanic of the game, but it is key to basically having certain abilities and doing certain things. So that creates an incentivization for your players to want to go out and explore and see more of the game to collect each of these different pages. The other thing is that these pages can unlock new abilities. This adds the incentive of making the player more powerful, giving them different abilities. Some pages may be easily accessible or found because they're put right in the path of what your main game flow is. But others you can make more hidden, and those could have abilities that could be pivotal to some players, or just add something extra that the players may not realize. But on top of that, we can add a second hidden mechanic as part of these spellbooks. And that would be that any player who finds all the pages to a spellbook won't need to have that particular spellbook equipped on them to use the spells within the book. We can make it so if they collect all the pages, all the spells become part of the player's character, and now they can use abilities without having certain spellbooks equipped so they don't need to rely on having certain things set for when they're taking on different foes or challenges within the game world. Basically, with this idea, it makes collecting not the central part of your game, but it adds a lot of incentives for gamers and players to go out into your game's world, collect these pages, and unlock the abilities that'll make them more powerful or give them more things they can use against certain enemies and different things that they may not be thinking about using. All right, that's how we build some collections and design a game around basically making a collection or building upon a collection as part of your gameplay element. Now, let's do something for the coders out there. Okay, so we've taken a look at the design side. Let's jump into some code and talk about how we can use collections in our games. And a way to think about collections is a data type known as a list. And a list in C# is very useful, especially when you're working in Unity, because it's a flexible data element. And what I mean by that is that you don't have to set how many of the specific object you're going to have in this container. You basically can create the container by setting a number, or you can just create an empty one and add your different components or elements of that list as you go. And a good way to take a look at that is by looking at one of the methods known as add. What add lets you do is lets you basically put in a new one of a specific class type, and in this case we have spell to represent the different spell pages in a spell book, and we can add that element into our list, and now it's part of our list. With that said, sometimes you want to take things out of a list, and there's two ways to do it. One is remove at, which will basically let you say, where in my list do I want to remove something from? And in this case, we're doing 0, which is the beginning of our list. The other way is to do a clear. And what that'll do is it'll remove everything from the list. So say we want to take everything out of the list at the moment and remove it completely, you can do a clear and it'll do that. But say we want to add something to a particular area of our list. Then we would use something like an insert. And what insert does is it lets you place a specific element where you want based on like the index you provide. In this case, we put 1, which is technically the second thing on the list. But if you have a bigger list and you have a sorted in a very particular way, you may want to put in a specific area, or you want it to be maybe toward the front because it's a brand new spell, instead of being put at the end, which is where add usually puts things. Then we have two ways of checking to see if something actually exists in our list. And one exists is trying to basically check to see if something like what you're looking for exists within the list. Contains is looking for the exact element within the list. So with contains, just because you create something that is exactly the same, because a class is a reference type and it has a specific memory location, it's going to fail that check because it's not in the same exact spot of memory as whatever new object you may be creating. So you always want to make sure what you're checking against is a specific thing when it comes to something like a contains. And then one of the useful parts of a list, especially when you need to update several different components or maybe even game objects, is for each. And using the for each loop, we can then grab each individual thing in our specific list and go through them and maybe do some kind of update action to each one of those. But with that, hopefully you're able to learn a little bit more about how you can incorporate lists into building out your collections or working with your different collections in your game. And with that, we've covered our look at lists and some different ways you can use them in your code, make use of them for all the different features they have built in. Hopefully you were able to learn a bit from just how to make a collection in general and just some ways to think about how you can incorporate them into your own game designs. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will catch you all next time.